The four-quadrant model of organizational change was developed by David Buchanan, an Emeritus Professor of Organizational Behaviour at Cranfield University School of Management, and David Boddy, a Research Fellow at the Adam Smith Business School, University of Glasgow. The review of the model is based on the book The Expertise of the Change Agent, Public Performance and Backstage Activity, published in 1992. The model can help you understand the organization's response to the change you implement. In the model, you have to see yourself as a change agent. This is a tool that all change agents, often also called project managers, can use in projects. The model consists of four quadrants that classify the nature of change itself, seen from the view of the affected individuals. Now let us review the construction of the model. The model consists of two dimensions, one placed vertically and the other placed horizontally. The vertical dimension differentiates between change perceived as radical in the top of the model and change perceived as incremental in the bottom of the model. The horizontal dimension differentiates between change perceived as peripheral to the primary task of the organization on the right side of the model and change perceived as affecting the core tasks of the organization on the left side of the model. The two dimensions form a matrix consisting of four quadrants, numbered from 1 to 4. Two factors are recurring in all four quadrants. The hassle factor is about the volume of frustration, conflict, and time-consuming technical and organizational issues the change agent will meet from the people involved in the change. The vulnerability factor is about the potential damage to the change agent's reputation and career opportunities if the change fails. Each of the four quadrants are reviewed in the following sections. In Quadrant 1, in the upper right corner, change is perceived as radical, but the change is also perceived as peripheral to the primary task of the organization. The hassle factor is likely to be moderate. You will have moderate resistance from the organization and only from those who become directly involved. The change is perceived as having limited impact on the overall business of the organization. The changes are also likely to be reversible or capable of deflection. The personal vulnerability for the change agent is therefore likely to be low in terms of the potential damage to the reputation and career prospects should things go wrong. As an example of a change placed in Quadrant 1 might be a new billing system in a manufacturing organization, potentially a radical departure from existing systems and in its impact on those directly involved, but peripheral to the primary manufacturing task of the organization. The organization can go back to the old system or choose another without interfering with the primary production. In Quadrant 2, in the lower right corner, change is perceived as incremental, but the change is also perceived as peripheral to the primary task of the organization. The hassle factor is probably low. The changes are likely to be reversible, or at least capable of adaptation to meet specific complaints and interests. The personal vulnerability for the change agent is, therefore, likely to be very low. An example of a change placed in Quadrant 2 could be a new job evaluation scheme and payment system for secretarial staff, peripheral to the main business activity and incremental in their departure from existing systems and procedures. The change can easily be cancelled or be reversed. In Quadrant 3, in the lower left corner, change is perceived as an incremental departure from existing arrangements. Still, the change is also perceived as affecting the core of the organization's activity. To the extent that the content of the changes reflect incremental departures from current arrangements, the hassle factor is probably low. However, timescales and budgets are likely to come under more scrutiny by management. The changes are likely to be less easily reversed, and the penalties for error are likely to be higher than in the first two quadrants. The personal vulnerability for the change agent is, therefore, moderate. An example of a change placed in Quadrant 3 is an upgrading of an existing management information system affecting the conduct of the main business activity, but incremental in its departure from existing arrangements and systems. It is not that difficult to implement, but it is difficult to roll back. In Quadrant 4, in the upper left corner, change is perceived as a radical departure from existing arrangements and is perceived to affect the organization's core activity. The change is most likely to present the change agent with multiple implementation problems, both organizational and technical. The hassle factor is probably high. Timescales and budgets are likely to be critical. The changes are likely to involve irreversible long-term commitments. The penalties for error will, therefore, be high. The personal vulnerability for the change agent is thus likely to be correspondingly high. Here are three examples of changes in Quadrant 4. Installation of a fully automatic production using robot technology. A merger with a complementary business. A move to new and improved office accommodation. All three changes are affecting the conduct of the primary task of the organization and representing fundamental departures from existing conditions. Quadrant 4 is the category of change which usually attracts the label strategic. Change in Quadrant 4 affects the entire organization. So how should the model be used? In this model, there is no right or wrong location. As a change agent, you should not strive for a particular location in the model. It would be best if you use the model to anticipate the hassle factor and level of your vulnerability as a change agent. You need to be aware that it is an organic model. A change project can migrate from quadrant to quadrant. Perceptions and priorities shift for several reasons, and a change that was regarded as peripheral and incremental can develop and expand to have radical implications for the core activity of the organization. There appears to be anecdotal evidence to suggest that many information technology projects migrate in this way, as the strategic potential of new systems is only slowly discovered in the implementation process. The categorization of change in this model is perceptual and will differ from setting to setting. Change that is perceived as radical in one organization may be commonplace in another. Change peripheral to one organization will be core to another. It is the perceptions of those involved which are critical here. The attempt to define strategic change from an outsider's perspective is, in this respect, awkward, if not irrelevant. The vulnerability of the change agent across these four stereotyped settings has been set in negative terms with respect to the price of error. The rewards which potentially attach to the change agent reflect the level of vulnerability. Few project managers have built highly successful personal careers on a history of incremental and peripheral changes to their organizations. The successful change agent in a Quadrant 4 setting is in contrast, highly visible in the organization, with consequent implications for short-term reward and longer-term prospects. It would help you if you made sure that the change you are responsible for gets enough time and resources to maintain a constant momentum. If it moves forward too slow, the involved participants lose interest. If it moves on too fast, then the participants involved feel rolled over. This dimension has particular significance in Quadrant 4, where pace and timing can critically influence perceptions of change and the support or resistance which it attracts. We shall now review an example of the use of the model. We start with a short case study. The manager of the warehouse at a manufacturing company wants to have more control of the stock in the warehouse. The manager is not very precise in his wishes, so he is presented with 4 very different solutions. To get an overview of the scope, the manager, as a change agent, places them in the model. Placed in Quadrant 2. Order a system where a barcode is placed on all goods. The goods are scanned when they arrive at the warehouse and when they leave again. It can replace the weekly inventory count. The manager assesses that there is likely to be a low hassle factor from his employees, and his vulnerability is low by choosing this system. He can always go back to the regular stock taking. Placed in Quadrant 1. Order a system that keeps track of where the goods are placed in the warehouse. The employees have to use a computer to find the goods themselves when they pick them up in the warehouse. This is a radical change, the use of a computer. The manager expects moderate hassle from employees as they have to use computers, but the rest of the work is as usual. The manager has low vulnerability as he can return to the old system. Placed in Quadrant 3. After implementing the previous system to keep track of the goods, the manager can order an extension. It is a system that automatically finds and picks the goods. Employees now only have to check if it is the right items that are selected. It will be easier for the employees, and therefore he expects a low hassle factor from them. New automatic machines and processes have to be introduced, and this takes time and costs a lot of money. He has to explain if the system fails. He has moderate vulnerability. Placed in Quadrant 4. A completely new, fully automatic warehouse is proposed. The system is directly connected to both the production department and the purchasing department. Everyone in the organization will work in the same network. It is a very expensive solution, and all work processes need to be changed. The manager expects a high hassle factor from the employees and managers from the other departments. The investment is irreversible. He has high vulnerability. He risks his entire career. For each organization, things will look different. The perception is different. The change agent must be aware of this. Let us now consider a criticism of the model. There is no fixed definition of when it comes to peripheral and core or incremental and radical. The model provides no instructions on how to attack the situations in the various quadrants. The model does not take into account that there may be different perceptions in the same organization, whether it is a good or bad change. The model does not give a clear indication of when or how often you need to re-evaluate the location of your project. The advantage of the model is that you get a clear sense of how the participants involved are seeing the change.